Welcome in, everybody. It is Book Talk. We are here. It's our book club, and we get to meet the amazing author of A Cruel Thirst right here. Boom. This book that we adored, by the way.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. So I've talked to you about. I think we've talked on your stream, not your stream, on your pages. We have to acknowledge she is cooler than me, guys. It's a thing. Everybody's cooler than me. That's just rude.
Aww.
But yeah, so we absolutely love the book. It was a very fun read because of the representation in the book. Being a Hispanic person myself, it was very nice. I was like, oh, they're speaking Spanglish. I love it.
Yes, no, I had so much fun writing this book.
So tell us a little bit about this and a little bit how it came up. So I have a podcast that we do a lot of cryptid stuff and we do a lot of lore and legends. So I'm really curious what you thought or how you incorporated the vampire lore into your story. Is that something that necessarily existed already in Mexico, or was that something that you kind of created on your own?
That was probably my favorite part, was like figuring out the lore. So for A Cruel Thirst, like it kind of came to be because I had already written and sold my first book, and so that first book was part of a 2-book deal. So we had my first book, Sinner's Isle, and then a second book, and we didn't know what that second book was gonna be, what it was gonna look like. We had no ideas. So when it came time to start writing it, the team and I got together. We were just like throwing out ideas. I was trying to pitch a sequel to my first book. They're like, nah, let's try something else. And I was like, all right, fine. So we kind of came up on vampires, and I was like, duh, of course. Who doesn't freaking love vampires? Of course. And right around that time, I had rewatched The Mask of Zorro. And
This gave Mask of Zorro vibes so much. I'm really glad that you did. I love that movie. Antonio Banderas is amazing in that. Sequel,
yes,
not so great, but like the first one was amazing.
Yeah, we won't talk about the sequel. We don't have to go there. The first one, it was just so zany and swoony, and it was just like all the things. And so like as I was rewatching, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly where vampires should exist.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be in this world. Uh, Alta California at the time obviously was, growing, but it still existed sort of in its own vacuum. So it was like, and it's very separate from the rest of the world. And so I thought, oh, this is perfect. And so then as I was like kind of thinking, okay, this is where the world's going to be. It's going to exist in this. I mean, it's an alternate world. It's not exactly in any like historical setting, although I pulled from a lot of historical settings. But I knew, okay, it's going to be in this world. And if it's in this world, then the vampires could either be obviously Eastern European, kind of like the quote unquote standard vampire that we're used to, or I could pull from the actual setting, from the culture, from the people that would live there. And I was like, okay, it's got to be Mexican vampires. It just feels right. And so then I started doing research, and honestly, like globally, there are stories of vampires like in every culture, just about. And so, yeah, there's many different sources in Mexica or Aztec lore that you can pull from. They have like a whole pantheon of gods and cryptids and creatures. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start pulling from from this lore mythology, but I'm going to make it my own, because I didn't want to pull from like a specific god that was worshipped or is still worshipped and make it my own. So I created my own, and I just started pulling. Okay, well, if it is this sort of god, how did vampires come to be? And so I just started slowly like building up. Okay, if they're vampires, they're from this world. How, but they still have to be what we think of vampires when we think of vampires. So I can't just build my own creature and call it a vampire. It has to still kind of be within this like ideal of what we think of vampires. And so then I just started building, pulling from it, from the land of the dead, and it's this god, that, you know, when this mourning woman basically like calls out to this god from beyond the grave, begging for her husband back. What does that look like if this husband came back and he had the power of this god inside of him? And so yeah, I just pulled and started building, and it was so freaking fun.
It was.
First I had like, thank you. Okay, no, I was gonna say, like, at first I had witches and I had chupacabras. I had like all of these things, and they're like, we could just do just one mythical being in this story. Like, it could just handle just one. I was like, all right, fine. So we pulled back and we just stuck to vampires.
I mean, you still kind of kept the chupacabras in there towards the end, because I noticed that, and I noticed that they have the very the classical look of what the chupacabras originally were, because that we've done a story on those. So it was just like, oh yeah, it actually looks closer to like the Species alien in the movie Species than it does like a little dog.
Yes, yeah, I had to sneak them in somehow.
I mean, it worked. So
thank you.
What was your favorite part writing this story, especially dealing with the characters? Because Lalo was really good, and this is one of those ones where I do love YA, but sometimes YA characters can be very like annoying and just like you kind of want to slap them around a little bit because they kind of get crazy. But you managed to give us all that angst without people being like slappable, other than Rafa. Rafa, everybody wanted to slap, but like Carolina and Lalo, Nena, like you had characters that were fun and weren't irritating. So like, what was your thought process bringing in those characters to life?
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate you guys not wanting to slap the characters around.
Other than Rafa.
Yeah, and deservedly so. He was like the Gaston, like he was Gaston coded from the very beginning, Rafa. Like I love Beauty and the Beast, and so he was that annoying character. But for Lalo, it was interesting because when I first started like thinking, okay, we're gonna do vampires, like I just assumed before I wrote the story, I was like, okay, obviously the vampire has to be this ancient, all-powerful, very suave, knows what he's doing vampire. And my friend was like, does he have to? Like, can't he just be a young man that turns into a vampire? Like, why does he have to be this ancient creature that falls in love with a teenage girl? I was like, you are correct. Why does he have to be this 1,000-year-old dude that like falls for this teenage girl?
No age gaps. No age gaps in A Cruel Thirst.
None. And so once she kind of like brought that up, it unlocked everything. I was like, okay, yes, Lalo came first in the story. Once I knew, okay, he's just gonna be a teenage boy that gets turned, and I was like, okay, well, what is that gonna look like? And so I started building out his storyline, and who he was. I thought, okay, if he's gonna be turned into a vampire, what would I do if I was turned into a vampire? I would not be a good vampire. There's no freaking way I'm handling this. And so I started kind of building out his character as like the anti-vampire, where he hates being dirty, he hates blood, he hates being around humans, which I guess is kind of a vampire trait, but you know, he's very like introverted, very bookish. And so as I built him out, I thought, okay, well then who is going to be the exact opposite of poor Lalo? And that's where Carolina came in. Okay, she's going to be this strong-willed, wannabe vampire huntress with a bunch of family, and she's going to torment him at every turn she gets. And so it was really fun building out their characters. And like as I was building out one, then I built out the other, and then it kind of just expanded into this world. And so all of the characters kind of became truly like very fleshed out for me as I built these two main characters. Because I was, you know, as I did my research, what life would be like in 1830s or early 1830s, or late 1820s, Alta California, what a family would look like in a big ranch, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so I knew she would have this big, dynamic, messy family. And then I thought, okay, well, what does this city boy his life look like? And so I was like, okay, here we go again. And so, yeah, it was really, really, again, I had so much fun with this whole book. Obviously, writing is really hard. And all of it's really hard, but I did have a lot of fun in the early stages of creation. And yeah, and I think it worked out because I really love the dynamics every character played in this story.
When I first picked this up and I was reading it, it very much gave me Mask of Zorro vibes. So like I envisioned Carolina as Catherine Zeta-Jones' character, very capable, very foolhardy, and I've pictured Lalo as Antonio Banderas, but at the very beginning of the movie when he was a bumbling moron. Because I love that about it, because it was like, oh yeah, I'm a vampire, but I have no idea how to be a vampire, and I'm gonna try, but I'm gonna fail so bad. And at first, the antagonistic approach with them about, he was like, why is she trying to hit me all the time? It was just like, well, yeah, I mean, you're exact opposites and everything, and I thought that was such a great choice to make. Because like, yeah, we don't get that a lot. Vampires, it's like, okay, I'm a vampire, and then suddenly I'm capable of absolutely everything, and I know exactly how all my powers work. And Lalo didn't.
Oh, yeah. He did not. And in this world, like none of them really knew, or on his end of things, like didn't even know what a vampire freaking was until he saw what happened to his family. So like he was just so clueless in so many ways. And honestly, like I know we watch so many movies, we read the books. If you became a vampire, like, do you really think you'd be so great at it right off the bat? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, some of us would. I know I would not. I
No,
know I would be.
I'd barbecue myself like 3 or 4 different times, forgetting that, like, oh wait, I'm not supposed to go in the sunlight.
Yeah, honestly, it would really not be that fun.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I mean, I was a night owl for a very long time, so like I wouldn't miss the sun nearly as much as everybody else. But yeah, it made for such a great story. I loved the setting. I loved everything on there. And on that trail of representation that we've had in the books, I heard you talk about it in 1 or 2 of your other TikToks. You're actually your imprint is very much into representation. Could you talk a little bit more about the imprint that you're with and the mission statement and things like that? Because I thought that was an amazing thing, and I was like, oh wow, okay, people need to know about this thing.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for asking that, honestly, because it is something I'm really, really proud to be a part of because they are amazing. It's truly so cool to be a part of. They're called Joy Revolution. They're under the umbrella of Penguin Random House. And it is an imprint that started with Nicola Yoon and David Yoon, who are writers. Nicola Yoon's had her books turned into movies. They're just like this powerhouse couple, and so they wanted to create an imprint because they are this couple that just loves love. They love seeing love being represented, like diverse voices. And so they started this imprint that basically is a young adult imprint that is a romance imprint, but it is written by diverse voices with characters that are diverse, and they're just stories about falling in love. I think there's so many books, especially like, or I would say, especially for the Latina community, and rightly so, because we need them, because obviously, clearly, we're still going through this right now. But books where we're talking about immigration and the struggles that you're facing, just like in this world. And so we need those books, but we also need books where we're just showing us existing and falling in love and being the heroes, being the villains, being all the things. And so that was kind of the mission of Joy Revolution, is to just highlight these stories of just us existing in the world. And so it's been really, really fun. I will have 3 books with them so far, and it's been a great experience working with my team. The whole team is just this powerhouse of diverse editors and writers and artists and everything. So yeah, I love Joy Revolution. It's been a blast.
And on that note, we've if anybody pays attention to her TikTok, we've actually got to see her working space and things like that. How has your life fed into your writing? Because I noticed you have an ofrenda, you have everything in your writing room. Also, it's a very beautiful writing room, and we've already touched that you are cooler than me. But like, I looked at your writing room, like, it's so themed very well and so nice, and it's like I have a hovel here in this like little cave, and everything's like it looks bright, it looks nice. So like, how has that kind of that really ties to your culture helped you with your writing and things like that? Because from myself, I am the no sabo kid, so like, I am Hispanic, I understand everything spoken to me. However, that's not enough in some areas of our culture. So what
Yeah.
is it like being tied in that way, and how does that kind of affect your writing?
Uh, uh, I think it affects all of my writing. It affects why I started writing, to be honest. And you know what's funny randomly about my office is that I don't go in there nearly as much as I should because it is so beautiful and perfect. But I get so distracted in that room because there's so many, like, all of my favorite things are in there. And but I do need to go in there more often because I don't get good Wi-Fi in there, and so I don't get on my phone. So I need to get back in there. But no, like, honestly, it's kind of why I started writing was my daughter, uh, who's in the other room. She she came home. This is like years ago. She was in 5th grade. She just graduated high school, so this is years ago. And she came home and she was reading The Hunger Games, and she was like, I want to be like Katniss. She liked Katniss, and I was like, but there's, and it just got me started thinking, like, there's no Katnisses that look like her. And so it became my mission. I'm going to start writing these stories with these heroines that look like her, like my family. And it's just kind of bloomed from there. It just kind of became my mission statement. And honestly, every time I go to events, especially like this last couple months ago, I went to Y'all West, which is a young adult book festival in Santa Monica. And the amount of Latina kids that came up to have me sign their books meant the entire world to me. And it was like, oh, wait, this is exactly why I did this. These stories are here because I wanted to see these kids represented. So yeah, it feeds into everything I do. And even when I do go into my office and I do look at my ofrenda, my obviously my grandparents are there, but my grandfather in particular was a poet laureate, and he was an activist for the Chicano movement. And so every time I look at him, I just know, like, okay, I'm out here doing the things. And when I first started writing, fantasy, I was talking to my uncle, who was a playwright and an actor. And I was like, oh, I know I'm not out here like doing what you guys are doing, like writing these stories about our culture and heritage. And he was like, but you're writing books for us. I was like, okay, yes, thank you. That's all I needed. Like, yes, we're going back. And so again, just like with Joy Revolution's purpose, it's just to show that we're here existing and that we're human and falling in love and being disasters and all of the things.
That's fantastic, and that story is why you're cooler than me. That's the tie-in. I'm like, I wasn't trying to be like obnoxious. It was a joke that we're dealing with, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I would love to for that to happen. Hopefully, that will happen in the future. Um, I have my best story so far is like I just got a narrator set up for my book, so I'm going to have an audiobook, and
Nice.
some of our streamers tracked down the narrator because she's also a cosplayer, and that cosplayer happened to be in that area to a con that they were going to, and they took my book over and got the narrator to sign my book, and I was just like, I'm not gonna cry, didn't expect that. But yeah, like that those are some things that you don't necessarily expect when you're writing books, is like, you don't expect how you see how it's going to affect you, like how those books affect you, and it doesn't really click in your head until you see how it's affect somebody else.
Yes.
And
it's weird actually, because you think it's true. You're writing this story, you're like, oh, this is so good, I love how I did this and that, and then you forget that other humans are going to read your words and it's going to affect them. And being a writer is a weird thing sometimes.
It can be. So this is your second book that's a standalone book. How, like, we talked to Alyssa Valaire the last time, and we talked about the fact that, like, her book is duology. How do you handle dealing with your characters once you've put them on a shelf? Because sometimes people get to work with their characters for like 2 books, 3 books, 10 books, or whatever. But if you're dealing with like solo stories, like, how do you handle that kind of thing where it's like, oh, I love these characters and we're never going to talk about them again?
Yeah. First of all, her book is amazing. So I am anxiously awaiting book 2 because it's
so Mike, especially the way it ended. And I talk to her all the time. I'm like, you did this to me and I don't appreciate it. She's an amazing person.
So, oh my gosh. And she's a great storyteller. So obviously here we are complaining about her right now.
Yes.
She needs to finish the book. No, so yeah, it is interesting writing standalones. It wasn't my original intention. Like my first book, Sinner's Isle, I had plans, I had ideas. I was like, we're gonna keep going, expand the world. I still would love to, honestly, for that book in particular. But it wasn't part of the deal that we signed the dotted line with. For A Cruel Thirst, like, I felt like we tied it all up pretty well, where you can just imagine what their life would look like beyond. And but it is still like a really weird, sort of very sad, very humbling experience to shelf it and be done with these characters that you've fallen in love with. But For A Cruel Thirst, because the paperback comes out in January, I think it is. So I do get to write like a little mini epilogue that will come out in another couple months. And so I get to revisit the characters and get to see what they're up to about 8 months after everything went down. So I think they're in my head. They're just gonna always live in this state of chaos.
Okay.
Happy, joyful chaos now.
Which means now I have to pick up the paperback.
Yeah. I think it is interesting writing standalones, because I feel like with duologies or series, you can really add so much depth because you have hundreds and hundreds of pages you can fill. So with standalones, it's different because you don't have the space, and so you really have to focus on, okay, well, what are the important details that I can only focus on instead of expanding into all of these different facets. So yeah, standalones are tricky, but I also really enjoy it because I do like moving on and meeting new characters.
And that makes sense. I liked how you did tell a very cohesive story. It had, I have read a lot of standalones where like the book kind of ends like 2 pages after the climax, and I'm like, but like we can get a little bit more. It feels like, there's like 10 more pages of a story you should probably get, and it doesn't get there. I was like, well, nope, that's the end. That's all you get. I'm like, so I like that we got a breather at the end of your book where it wasn't just like, okay, we got this ending done, and then we never hear from them again. It was like, no, we get a little breather. And
it's sad.
It is sometimes. I've read some books and I'm like, man, 10 more pages is all I needed. Just 10 to let me know that they're slightly okay. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad we got that little bit after all the wildness. Because it is a bummer. You want to throw the dang book, like, if you don't get enough of the goods.
I have thrown a book from time to time where I was just like, I am done with this. Like, oh, yeah. Although that
I put in the work.
That does kind of make a good book, though. Like, if you get so emotional that you throw a book, that's also not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, it shows that you care, you know?
Okay, so you have talked several... Oh, whoa, Posky has a question. We have that. I love when Posky asks us the questions. What is the process for creating a character for her? Do you sort the feelings of the personality there, or as you come up with the names and the looks, or is it name first and then personality, or a mix of both?
It's definitely a mix of both. I feel like they all need to like blend and feel right together. So for me, when I come up with characters, I think always first is backstory. It's like, okay, I have this character that is this. Why are they like this? And so I kind of go back and write up a few like short stories about who they were before we meet them. And then I go on Pinterest and I freaking make an entire board. I try and find like not exactly, but like ideas of what I think they look like. And sometimes it's not even like their face, but like aspects of them. For Lalo, there was this image of this like model, and he has this little mustache. And I was like, that's it. That's got to be Lalo's thing. And so I started building his personality around this mustache. So like and it just makes sense for him where that would be like the thing. Like, it's got to look good. It's got to be right. And so yeah, I think each layer I'm just building to create these characters, and so I just layer it up. I feel like the name probably comes last for me, but it is a process. Sometimes it just clicks and you're like, that's who it is. And then sometimes, like for Carolina, I have a friend named Carolina, and she has this personality, and I'm like, perfect, that blends so perfectly. And so yeah, I think it all just kind of like slowly clicks into place for me. But my Pinterest board is on fire every time. I'm like, okay, all these little things, little artwork, everything, and I just keep it to myself, and I build from there.
So you've written 2 books so far. We have Sinner's Isle and A Cruel Thirst. Of those 2 books, and I haven't read the first one yet, but I will be reading it very, very soon. Of those books, which character might be closest to you as a person? Because I know through finishing up this book that I'm writing, very clearly the main character has a lot of aspects of me, and it's like, I wish it didn't, but I was just like, well, there's some trauma to work through, so we need to do that. So which of those characters do you think you probably represent a little bit more, whether you did it purposely or like when you step back, you're like, oh, well, I didn't mean to do that much, but yeah, that's me.
Yes. Well, I find that, like, because I'm on book 3, I find that with each story, kind of like the themes that they're going through are all my traumas. And so like each story, I feel like I'm working out these things that I didn't even know I had issues with or problems with or needed to work on. So yeah, I feel like writing is such great therapy, and it's like stuff you didn't even realize was a trigger or was an issue, and you're like, oh wait, okay, maybe I need to work on that myself. I think for as far as characters in Sinner's Isle, which you didn't read, which you'll get to, thank you, I appreciate that. In Sinner's Isle, there is this side character. His name's Santiago, and he is just always kind of comes quick with a joke, or tries to lighten the mood, or says something off kilter. But mostly it's kind of to just like shift the mood and like dilute all the like yucky hard feelings. And I definitely feel like that's me. Like I avoid feeling things at all cost. And so I feel like a lot of his personality is kind of like how I deal with things. It's just like, we're not going there. Like, here's a joke instead. And, but really, he's got like a lot of deep trauma and like a hard backstory. But he's just moving on with his humor. He leads with that. So I feel like most like him because we don't need to feel things. We don't. It's hard.
Feelings suck. Yes, they can.
Yeah.
So in this seeming age of everything getting optioned for movies and TVs, what would you love to see one of your books become? Would you like to be a movie? Do you want to see it become a drama series of us being Hispanics? Would you like to see it as a telenovela? Like, where would you like to see your book end up in a space?
Oh my gosh. That would be actually really fun to see Cruel Thirst as like a telenovela.
I can
think
see
it would
that.
lend to it. I think it would lend to it in its dynamics. I think that'd be so freaking fun. I would like to see anything in anything at any point. I think that'd be great. I wouldn't be mad at anything. I do feel like for Sinner's Isle, because it is because she has shadow magic, and so it's this magical world. I feel like it would lend itself better to um, an animated show. I think would be really really cool. We just watched the new Predator. I don't remember. I don't know what the actual title is, but it's animated. It was so well done and looked so cool and dynamic. That's where I think that would be. I think A Cruel Thirst would be cooler as like live action. But I think we need to bring more animated fantasy stories out because you could do so many cool things with animation when it comes to like powers and shadow magic and all of that stuff. So wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad if that happened. Anybody listening?
Knight wants to know, what was your thought process when you wrote the part about Rafa making Lalo ride a pony?
Yeah. Yeah, my thought process was like, what's going to make me giggle? And the thought was seeing Lalo on a pony just felt right. Like the entire story, I just kind of was just trying to make myself laugh. Like there's a scene with the pan, her cousin comes out with a pan, she's a pan wielding sidekick. There's like all these little scenes, but the pony one for sure was like just a moment where I just giggled. That was it. That was the pure intention, was just to make myself laugh.
We were all kind of giggling about that. Watching a grown ass
so
man.
dumb.
Watching a grown ass man come out in a pony. Everybody's got these like massive like steeds, and then he's just like, pony.
Yeah, it just felt right. It just felt right. Yeah.
Well, so piggybacking off of that, does the thought of your book becoming a movie or a show ever occur to you as a write? Does it influence what you might think of in the past? Does it change how you might approach a book in the future?
When I like every time I write, honestly, I see it in my head. I try to just kind of like take what I see and put it on the page. So in my mind, I'm seeing like a movie play out in live action as I'm writing it. Like I see people, I see the world, all of it. So like I try to just like again take that and put it on the page. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I don't get it right as like dynamic as I see it. So yeah, like when I write, I'm always envisioning like if this was something, could this work? And I have a film and TV agent. I've had her since my first book came out. And I mean, even when I first signed with her, you know, she made me very aware that it's hard to sell fantasy stories in this day and age, and especially with the cast of characters that I have created, that I have written. which is dumb and unfortunate. However, I still write it regardless of what it could possibly be, because this to me is more valuable. Writing these stories is more valuable than seeing it on film ever. So yeah, but I'm not going to say no if they come with an idea, as long as they cast it right and they make sure to put the characters in that need to be in. Yeah. But when I write, I for sure see it as a potential being anything. I'll take it.
So I've noticed that you talked about your inner monologue and your inner movies and stuff like that. There was a famous author that recently was talking about that, and she was like, I don't have an inner like dialogue, or I can't picture things in my head. I'm like, how do you write? Like, I
For the
don't get
life
that.
of me, I don't understand. Me freaking either. I do not understand how you're. I can't. My brain can't fathom, because hell, just day to day, the imagination's going. Yeah, my brain does not fathom.
Yeah,
Not
she's a
understanding
New York Times best-selling author. I do like her books, but it was just like it was just an interesting thought. She was just like, oh yeah, I can't picture anything in my head. I'm like, how do people like function without like an inner monologue at least? But like definitely not daydreaming, because like yeah, I like when I'm not writing, I have daydreams of like what my characters are doing, and then they'll occasionally look at me like, why aren't you writing? But like it'll be that thing where it's like, hey, you have an imagination, and it's like it. So to get that kind of story with like no inner like ability to picture that story, it just seems like a weird concept to me.
Oh my gosh, I can't. I said, I can't imagine. Truly, like, this is how I knew I should be writing before I started writing. So we had been on this binge of watching The Walking Dead, like like every episode. This is years and years ago. Every single episode, like we were binging it so hard. So my brain could not shut off the storyline. So like I would be out, because we live in the country. I would be out like putting water, like getting, I don't know, feeding chickens or whatever. And I would look out and I'd think, okay, if a walker was coming right now, and I would like the whole storyline would play in my head. And again, I'd be like, oh, I'm dead. I give up. But the image was playing of like, okay, if this happened, this is what I would do. I'd get my crossbow. It's not happening. But in my head, I was like, I'm gonna do it, you know?
I mean, in your head, we're all Daryl at that point. We're just like, we got our crossbow, we got this. I can very clearly aim and hit something 100 yards away without any kind of problems. Yeah, that's gonna be a thing. I can absolutely do that in my head.
Work, yeah, with the hair like covering half your face, like no problem.
So we've talked about it several times already that this is your second book, but it is not your last book. You definitely have at least one more coming. Hopefully way more than one more coming, but at least contracted, you have another book coming, and it sounds amazing. So I need you to talk about this book, because it's obviously something I'm going to be grabbing in 2026 when it comes out.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I don't know how to talk about this book yet. I got to work on it. I got to step up my game when it comes to pitching this book. So my third book with Joy Revolution, it's Carnival Fantastico. And it is about a traveling magical carnival, where everything is glittery and gilded and spectacular, but we don't really know where this magic is coming from. And so it follows Esmeralda, who is posing as a fortune teller within this carnival, because it's sort of a safe haven for people running from the law, from the government, from the military. And so she is on the run, hiding from the king's commander, and basically staying there. And so she wants to see. I'm tanking this, but just stay with me, guys. Stay with me. So she wants to stay on with the carnival because they only allow them to stay for a year. And so in order to stay on, you have to be the lead act. And so she joins kind of this competition to become the lead act. And now comes Ignacio, who is searching for somebody that knows basically how to expose the commander of the army. And so he enters the carnival looking for her, not realizing it's her, but looking for her, for this person that holds these secrets. Um, they may have known each other in a past. They may have actually been childhood sweethearts that became enemies. They might have a history that's actually really sweet and very sad. And so, yeah, so it all plays out in the center of this fantastical carnival. And so, yeah, it's a good time. It's a chaotic mess of a book, and it's so fun.
These aren't spoilers, Oski. These are going to end up on the back of a book. You'll be fine.
Yes, you'll be fine. No spoilers. No spoilers.
No, we tried to stay away from spoilers. It can get tough when you're talking about a book. You're just like, oh yeah, because we've all read the book now, so we're just like, oh, we want to talk about every aspect of the book. But at the same time, not everybody coming in and like watching the video later wants every aspect of a book talked about, because yeah, then there's spoilers involved. So we tried to cliff notes the book as is. So for those who haven't like read your first book, give us a little bit. We're putting you on the spot. It's like, hey, you're bad about talking about your book, so let's make you talk about all of your books.
I'm ready. I am so ready for this. I've got this. Sinner's Isle is a young adult romantasy. Again, you might have put these together. But this one follows Rosalinda, who is a majestic. So basically, she has magic. She has this power. And so because she has this power, she and other young women like her have been banished to this tiny island in the center of the sea, Sinner's Isle. And the only way for these majestics to get off the island is if they bind their power to a man of influence, which obviously you don't love. Obviously we hate. And so does she. And so she wants to escape the island before it's her turn to bind her power. And she does that by blackmailing this recently marooned pirate, Mariano, who happens to wash ashore onto Sinner's Isle. And so now they must work together to help each other, basically. And yeah, again, it's chaotic. It's fun. It's funny. And there's these deeper, darker themes that we explore throughout the story. So yeah, pick it up and read it. So good. It's so good.
How do you feel about writing the ending of a story, or do you feel that stories can change very quickly? Like, for example, like if you're reading a different ending where like these two people that were destined to be together died without even kissing. Like, how do you has the endings of any of your books changed on a large scale, and does that come with any kind of regret that may have happened in that pacing of that story?
You know, I think for most of these stories, they ended pretty much like I wanted to. I feel like the end comes to me really, really soon. Like I know how I want them to end. And again, for romantasy or any romance stories in particular, we know that there's got to be a happily ever after or a happy for now. Otherwise, readers are going to be pissed.
Otherwise, you'd never sell another book again.
yeah. I can't say this is a romance or romantasy even without people knowing, okay, we're gonna get something good in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for me, most of the endings were pretty spot on. With A Cruel Thirst, my first version of that story was very different. I don't want to do spoilers, I guess, but it had to do with the grandfather, where he was there the entire time, and the beginning was different. So that switched. So that part was different.
Well, yeah, Anthony Hopkins dies in The Mask of Zorro, so it does make a little bit more sense.
Yes, yeah. So he had to go, and at first I thought, no, I have to keep him, but he's there in spirit, you know.
So you were recently on the paper trail with Diana Rodriguez Wallach, another author that we've had on here, and I know it was touched on briefly, but since you are comfortable in the romantasy space, the YA romantasy space, is there a point in time where you decide that you want to make a move and do something different? If so, what direction would you see yourself going?
Yes, I feel like for this, because I have ideas of books, I have pitches ready, storylines prepared. I definitely feel like I want to go less romantasy and more. I think this fourth one that I really am looking into would be more gothic romance. Um, this one would still be young adult, and I also have like a, I don't know if it would, yeah, I guess it'd be horror thriller, that would also be young adult. And then I think after that, figure out where I want to go if I want to like explore the adult space. But yeah, I definitely want to expand into horror and gothic and kind of like dig my nails into like the creepy factor a little bit more, which I'm excited about.
Horror is a good place to go. That's where like that's where my first book is. It's a horror anthology series, but then I'm also writing fantasy and stuff like that. So I understand that itch to want to like I can do this other thing.
Yeah, and why not? It's like why not explore all the things that we really love and that excite us? Because I feel like if I'm not excited about a project, it's just not worth doing because you have to edit that story so many damn times that if you don't like it, you're gonna really suffer. So I want to only like follow where the magic is leading me, and that's into the darkness. I'm ready.
So with that change or potential change of that, you being a traditional author or traditionally published author, would that greatly affect your home in the imprint that you're currently? Would you have to try to find something different? Like, that feels like a very daunting task. So, would you explain your thought press on what that might entail?
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing with when it comes to traditional publishing, there's no guarantees. I mean, I would say even if you're like a best-selling author, but I'm sure they have some guarantees. um, but like no matter what, you have to try and pitch your next book, and your publisher could say no. And then what? Then you have to go on submission again and try and sell it to other publishers. Yeah, for Joy Revolution, because they're like strict, like it has to be romance. I know my horror one wouldn't be pitched to them because in this one there is no romance. And so we would have to search for a new imprint. We'd have to go on submission, prepare a package. I'd probably have to write the entire story first, and there's no guarantee anything can come of it. With this gothic romance one, we're going to try and pitch it to them first, but again, there's no guarantee that it's something that they're looking for in their imprint at this time. And so then I would again prepare a package and start trying to pitch it to other publishing houses. So yeah, there's no freaking guarantee about anything at all. And publishers are always looking for the bottom line, which is, are you selling books? Are you making them money? Which sucks. Boo. Um, and so that plays a major factor. And so, like going into trying to pitch this fourth book, they're going to look at my sales. They're going to look at pre-orders for when Carnival Fantastico goes live. So all of those things affect what happens next for me. And those are things I probably just can't control. And I just got to let the universe do its thing. I'm going to manifest. So yeah, we'll see. And I feel like I would love to look into indie publishing. Like if I had an idea that I was like, oh, this could go well for the market, I got it. Actually, my friend and I co-host a podcast of the Publishing Persuasion. We are publishing an anthology this Christmas, which it brings me so much joy to say because it's called Jingle These Bells, and it is it is It's a smutty holiday anthology. So that's gonna be fun. So that's my first like little dabble into indie publishing, with a smutty anthology. So who knows
I
where
have
I'm
a
going?
smutty Christmas book coming too.
You
That's my summer project, is to get this done. It was one of those things where it was just like, because again, my head bounces. I have 12 books with at least 1 to 2 chapters written, because I'm one of those things where it's like my main book is, I'm trying to get this done. I've told this story a bunch of times, but like, I don't look old, but I am old. That's the beauty of being Hispanic. It's like, the joke is black don't crack, but Spanish, the wrinkles vanish, and that's
I love that. I love
that's been my thing forever. But I had this book that I wanted to write like 25 years ago, and the disc corrupted and took 28 chapters away, 26 chapters away, and it was gone. And I was just like, well, never writing again. And then 25 years later, a friend of mine got this idea for our podcast that we run, and we write short story horror anthology series, and we explore the legends and everything that created those stories. And through that, I gained my love back for writing, and I started writing my fantasy novel again, which is like 80% done at this point. So that'll be out either the end of this year or early next year. And through that thing, I read an insane amount of stuff also. I mean, I'm not like book talk, like I have 200 books done. I'm like, I'm not that bad, but like 30-40 books is not bad for me in a year. But like, I still need to write. But every now and then I'll read something, or I'll write a book, I'll watch a movie or something, and like, oh, I can do that. I'm gonna do something like that. But then it clouds my thought process, and I have to get the poison out of my brain. So I write like a chapter or two of a book, and I'm like, well, shelved until I finish this. And yeah, it's always kind of interesting, the thought process of what you're trying to do. My best friend is not a woolly mammoth. I'm not that old.
but close.
But close. Look, it's like Jesus doesn't have any interest on the money that he loaned me. Fine. Fine. If you have the ability to go back and change anything, particularly like the Cruel Thirst and anything like that, is there anything that you changed, or are you happy with what you have on paper?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Without ruining a book, obviously. It's like, oh man, I really wanted this. Well, I guess we're not going to read that book. No, I'm just like,
I would change everything, the whole thing. No, it's funny because with Sinner's Isle, well, I think with each book, and I think this is what you hope for each book, is that you've grown as a writer and as a human, after and during each story. So I feel like for Sinner's Isle, I wrote that, in 2020. It published in 2023. I feel like I've changed so much since I wrote that I would totally, if I reread it, which I haven't, which I refuse to do. If I reread it, I would probably be like, oh, I want to tweak this. I would change that. I would take out that. And probably same thing for A Cruel Thirst. Like if I went back and reread, I think each thing I could definitely go back and be like, oh, I learned something. Learned a new trick. Like, do not add that. Take that out. Yeah. So I don't know any specifics of what I would take out, what I would change, because I haven't reread, because I refuse to, because I know I would. I know I would be picking it apart. But yeah, I think for me, each story, I just want to write a little bit better and learn from each thing. So yeah, and I don't do it, but sometimes when the books first go up on NetGalley, like I'll read the critiques or what people are saying, and it doesn't hurt my feelings. Knock on wood, I'm lying, it totally does, but I internalize it and I take it and I'm like, oh, you know what, they're right, I could do better. I'll look at them for the first little bit and then I block it from my phone. Any reviewing sites, but I do think they're helpful because I feel like you could learn a lot from the critiques that people that you don't know are saying, because they don't care if it's going to hurt your feelings, and they're telling you how they feel. And a lot of times it's really valid. A lot of times it's like, nope, they had a good point there. I should have done that better.
For some reason, it's like the 3 stars. The 3 stars are like, oh, you know what? That's valid.
Yeah. And it's funnily enough, like I got tagged on a 3-star review. It was like really a glowing review. And I was like, but why did we do the 3-star? But I didn't ask, but I was like, thank you for that. But yeah, a lot of times it's like that 3-star where there's like, you're so close to getting it good, but they're like, but if you'd only done this, this, and this, and you're like, oh shit, you're right. I could have done that. I should have done that. Damn it.
Mm-hmm. That's how I got a 3-star, and I got a 3-star on mine, and I was just like, well, damn it! I had the idea that I should have switched around the stories, and I should have put this story for further up on the series, and it's just like the 3 stars haunt me more than like the 1 stars. The 1 stars are just like, well, you didn't like my book anyway. I don't care. But like this 3-star was just like, oh, I was so close, so close.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's a real gut. It's real knife to the heart when you're like, I was this close to getting you. I was close.
All right, so we'd love to have you back when Carnival Fantastico comes back. Absolutely would love to do that. Can you ask her about the audiobook? Oh, okay. Okay, so he can't. So, we'll get that question here. He has a question, but he can't form it. So I'll kind of take it here. Your audiobook narrators, how did you go about handling that? Was that something, or was that decisions based on the imprint, or is that something that you had any kind of input in? Because of course your characters felt very fleshed out from your audiobook narrators because of how well they did. Very clearly they were Hispanic people doing the book, and I think that made a lot of difference when it came to that. It felt very, very much at home and not jarring, because I've heard some really bad audiobooks, so this was not one of them. It was very fantastic. So like, what is the process of that? Is that something that you have listened to at all, and what does that feel for you?
Yeah, it's actually a really fun process. So Penguin Random House they do it all, but it's fun because what they do is, so for Sinner's Isle, my first book, we just had the one narrator. And so they sent me a bunch of different clips of a bunch of different narrators. I'm reading a little bit of, I don't think it was Sinner's Isle they were reading from. They were just reading like, just their clips that they have pre-recorded. And so we like pick the top 5 and then the top 3 and then my top 2, so like throughout the entire process, I got to be a part of the choosing of who I thought sounded most like my main character in Sinner's Isle. For A Cruel Thirst, it was really fun because they're like, let's do a male narrator and a female narrator. And I was like, this is the best. This is what I was hoping for. And so again, they sent me, I think for that one, I got maybe 8 samples of different actors for each character, for Lalo's point of view and for Carolina's. And so again, I got to choose who in my head sounded the most like the characters. And so, yeah, I think for Carolina's, it was pretty like easy, but for Lalo, I really wanted to make sure his voice sounded a little bit younger, and just sounded like him. And so that one was like a little bit harder because there were so many great actors that they sent us clips of, but some of them were like too deep. Some of them were like a little too like manly, like rough and rugged. And I was like, that's not this guy. But we ended up like narrowing it down, and it turned out great. And what was really, really cool was the producer of A Cruel Thirst in particular reached out and was like, just want to say thank you, because we don't really have a ton of books where these actors get to kind of embrace their own heritage. And so, you know, like, thank you for writing stories like this where they get to explore, you know, their voice. And that I was like, thank you. Thank you for like hiring these actors and for being very specific and strategic on who you were trying to find to fill these roles. So yeah, it was really, really fun process. And they work it all up. They do everything. The only thing they asked me besides those questions were like pronunciation on certain, like on the gods, on like things like that. And so that was interesting, of just like either I would record it or I would just find it online, versions of the sounds, how they would pronounce things. But yeah, the whole thing was like a fun process to watch. It wasn't necessarily me doing anything besides being like, I like this one. And it seemed like it turned out really, really well. I only listened to the first few chapters, and then I was like, oh, nope, no more. Can't listen to anything else. They seemed to do a really good job, and I've heard a lot of really good things.
No, they did a fantastic job. Like I'm an audiobook guy. Like we our book club tends to be a little bit of a mix on some people taking the audiobooks, some people not taking the audiobook. But I loved it. I wasn't expecting a duet, and I really liked that. Like as soon as I came in, I'm like, oh yes, duo. I love these, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you've listened to some of them, and it's just like every now and then you're like, that's not how that female voice is going to go. And I know you're trying really hard as a guy, but like it's just not there. So I really do appreciate when you do get that chance of duets, and duets don't come often because they're not cheap. Like duets are expensive. Yeah. And it was a treat to hear the voices as they were, because they very much felt like the characters.
Yay! That makes me so happy. Maybe I'll try and listen to it. No, I won't.
Well, yeah. Again, also from a writer's standpoint, like some people don't realize how many times you have to revise a book, to the point where you kind of hate the book. Like you love that you created a book and you love that people love that story, but you hate that story by the end of that process because of how many times you've had to revise and edit that book down. And yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I find myself asking all the time, like, is this boring? Is this story boring? Like that's the main, because I'm feeling bored right now. And they're like, girl, you have read this 20,000 times. Of course, you know what's happening. I'm like, okay, good, thank you. Because I'm always like, is this scene boring? Please help me. Yeah. You better be ready to revise, because it feels like it never ends at a certain point where you're like, please, I can't read this again. What does help me, like towards the end of the process, is I have an app, the voice app, I think is what it's called, where it just reads it to you, and it has like its own like different accents and stuff like that. So by the end, it's the only way I survive the stories.
I can see that. That could work. All right, guys. Anyway, once again, this is Angela Montoya. This is A Cruel Thirst, an amazing book. If you have not read it already, you should. It's fantastic. And she has another one coming out again. That is Carnival Fantastico. That will be out in 2026. Every time I hear that name, so this is the Hispanic in me. Every time I hear that name, I hear Sábado Gigante. Like it feels like very much like Carnival Fantastico. Like my brain just goes there. I don't know if that happens to anybody else. But
it's the only way you should say it. It's the only way it should be said from now on. Yeah.
Yes. Carnival Fantastico. Yes, we're going to go with that. So I appreciate you being here.
I'm going to have to record your voice and then just play it every time.
I will give you the clip. You've got it. I appreciate you coming on and taking the time. Again, we'd love to have you in 2026 when the book comes out again. You are amazing. We love this. We love the book. It was fantastic. We gave our gold stars because that's what we do in here, because these kids have had it too good for too long. We're taking our gold stars back in our book club. And guys, again, Angela Montoya, thank you so very much, guys. And yeah, we will see you in 2026.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
All right. We will catch you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.